Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and I really do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing fine, thank you very much, and loads of love to each and every one of you. Don't forget to go and get that quintessential, very special drink that is unique to you, because we all seem to have very unusual drinks. And if yours is very special, do let me know about it. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, it was a beautiful crisp Saturday morning in the early summer of 1992, and the radiant sunshine filtered through the kitchen, enveloping the room in a vibrant warm light. I glanced out of the large windows that overlook panoramic exquisite views of the verdant green countryside, generously clustered with Douglas firs and ponderosa pines, to see if I could see any signs of my husband, but he was nowhere to be seen. Where had Peter got to, I wondered? Why on earth was he taking so long? I knew he was at the stable block attending to our 5 horses and leading them out to the horses' meadow, along with our 8 sheep and 4 billy goats, which had a meadow all to themselves, as we did indeed have quite a menagerie of animals on our quaint little hobby farm. I bustled around the kitchen of our Cape Cod-style home, making pancakes for breakfast with blueberry and cinnamon compote, and the delicious smells wafted around our home, alerting my daughter's hunger pangs to the revelation that something quite good was cooking on the hob. In a trice, Sandra bolted into the kitchen and began diving into the pancakes with the enthusiastic gusto of a hungry 12-year-old girl who had a bottomless pit for a stomach and in any given time could eat 12 pancakes in a single sitting, yet annoyingly still remained as skinny as a rake. I was looking forward to the day ahead of us, as there was going to be a rather grandiose, spectacular fete at my daughter's school, of which the whole town was likely to attend, and I was being put in charge of the candy store, and I was looking forward to the excursion, which was a great opportunity to see my friends again. "Have you packed all the fudge away for the school fete?" my daughter asked me. "Yes, I have, and it's all in cellophane with pretty little ribbons attached, and I've labelled it Sandra's Fudge so that you can get all the acclaim for it." "Thanks, Mum," said Sandra. "You're the best, and so is your fudge. I can't wait for the fete today. Mrs. Pennington believes the whole town will be coming." "I think she's absolutely right," I said. "After all, it is a charity event, and so I can't imagine that anyone will be staying at home. And besides, there's so much to do, from jumping castles to merry-go-rounds and all kinds of exciting rides. Personally, I love the exciting stores, selling things from the baked goods to the cakes, candies, cheeses, chutneys and preserves, not to mention those cooking demonstrations. My word, the chef last year, he was brilliant. Do you remember those incredible praline crepes he made? He was a superstar. Well, word on the grapevine is that one of America's finest chefs will be doing some amazing demonstrations on how to make the world's tastiest burgers. He's going to let us in on some of his culinary secrets. "Well, I'm definitely going to watch that," I admitted. "I wouldn't mind a little culinary inspiration. My burgers could do with a little bit of jazzing up." At that moment the kitchen door flung open, and I could see my husband in his Wellington boots coming into the kitchen with a broad beam on his face, looking a little flustered and energised from his brief stint outdoors. "Ooh, something smells delicious," he said, walking over to the kitchen sink to wash his hands and dry them. "It's a beautiful day out there, a lovely day for a fete. But you know, Washington, we can have 4 seasons in one day here, so here's hoping the weather holds. Please God, let it not rain." "I also hope the weather stays fixed like this," I laughed. "Let's just keep the fingers crossed, shall we?" The shrill sound of the telephone broke the peaceful ambience as it rang, and my husband promptly went to answer it. "It's for you," he said, handing the handset over to me, which I took reluctantly from him, placing it to my ear. Who was it now, I thought, really irritated by this abrupt intrusion on our special family time that I so enjoyed, as family breakfasts, especially over the weekends, were always very special to me. "Hello," Judith Maynard speaking. Hello, Judith. How are you? It's Shane Farrell speaking. I'm fine, thank you. And you? Well, I was just wondering how the painting's coming along. I'm so looking forward to picking it up this Tuesday. Oh, it's going to be the best golden anniversary ever for us. I know my husband is going to be blown away by your work. I'm so looking forward to seeing the piece. It must be breathtaking. I stumbled on my words. You mean the picture for your golden anniversary? The Black Panther? That's right, the very one. How's it coming along, dear? I bet it looks sensational. I do not think my husband is going to believe that I got Shadow, our favourite Black Panther, painted in colour, lying on our couch at home, larger than life, in a fabulous piece of artwork. It's coming along very nicely, I lied. It really looks stunning. Oh, I know it does. I'm glad to hear it. I can't wait to pick it up on Tuesday afternoon. What time will suit you best? 3 o'clock will be good, I said. Right, see you then. Can't wait. Bye. I put down the handset, my face growing as white as a sheet, and my eyes staring vacantly into space. I could hardly believe it. Is everything all right, sweetheart? Asked my husband, his mouth crammed full of pancake. You look as if you've seen a ghost. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to come to the fete today. You'll have to take over my candy stand, Peter. I'm sorry to have to do this to you at the last moment, but I really haven't got an option. What's happened? Is everything all right? Nothing wrong with your father? Not really. You know that art piece that I was commissioned to do for next month? Well, it seems I got the dates completely wrong. I honestly don't know how that happened. It must be some kind of misunderstanding or screw-up on my part. Oh dear, it seems a woman wants the art piece for Tuesday afternoon. That's for her husband's golden anniversary. I can hardly tell her that I haven't even started the work. It would break her heart. My husband gasped. But can you finish an artwork in 3 days? Well, I'm going to have to, aren't I? I haven't really got a choice in the matter. This is a golden anniversary we're talking about. How can I possibly let the poor woman down? Does that mean you're not coming to the fete? Asked my daughter. Oh, that's such a bummer. You'll be the only one in town still at home, as everybody's going. Well, that's the way it'll have to be, sweetheart. I'm desperately sorry, I really am. I wish I could change things. Please will you make my apologies to the local mothers and explain my reasoning behind my absence? They will understand, sweetheart, my husband said, planting an affectionate kiss on my cheek. All will be well, I promise you. And I'm quite partial to running a candy store, especially if a few pieces of your delicious fudge will come my way, he said, giving me a big wink. My heart sank as I watched Peter pack the car trunk with the large baskets of my homemade fudge that I'd made the previous evening. He waved at me and got into his vehicle with my daughter, and I watched them as they drove away down the long gravel driveway. How I wished I could be with them. I needed to get my act together as far as the art commission was concerned, as I had a prominent reputation in the art world, and I was always being booked to produce either contemporary or realistic art pieces, sometimes for offices, corporate firms or individuals, with a specific idea in mind that they wanted recreating, and to date I had been incredibly happy with my work, as indeed had all my customers, up to now, that is. Finally, after dressing in my art clothes, which consisted of a loose flowing white cotton blouse and a pair of comfortable white cotton pants, I closed the front door behind me and proceeded towards my studio, which was situated close to the bottom of the drive, adjacent to a vast wooded area of tall statuesque Douglas firs on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side was the enchanting evergreen meadow with white wooden poled fencing and an inverted gate inbuilt into the structure, where the sheep and goats were grazing. I could hear the pretty sounds of the goats' bells tinkling as they moved across the grass, a nostalgic sound that always reminded me of a visit to the Swiss Alps I had as a young girl. I opened my studio door and pulled out the canvas that I'd thankfully long since prepared for in advance for this particular commission, as the qualities of my tools was very significant for me when it comes to producing good work. The canvas was a very long, narrow, big square piece that the woman intended to hang in pride of place above the settee in her living room, opposite her marble fireplace. Why a black panther, I'd asked her. Well, when my husband and I were on honeymoon in Malaysia, we both found what looked like an abandoned black kitten in the wild, which we rescued and we took to a local vet in the area. It turned out that this pretty little black kitten was a black panther, but you could never tell the difference. It was the cutest, most interactive kitten that I've ever seen. It was adorable, a real bundle of joy. We organised for the poor little orphaned panther to be taken to a private, well-established sanctuary in Malaysia, where she would have a good life and lots of space to roam freely in the wild. We would send money to the sanctuary every single year, and in turn the sanctuary would send us exquisite pictures of this black panther, and we became fixated and enamoured by her. We called her Shadow. She was the most exquisitely beautiful cat that I've ever seen, with these mesmerising green eyes. We sometimes went over to Malaysia to see her. Of course she's no longer alive, but she has descendants living there at the sanctuary. I want to give my husband a picture of Shadow lying sprawled across our large sofa so that she can always be here with us in spirit. I have brought a picture of our living room and a picture of Shadow for you to copy with a touch of your artistic licence and savoir-faire, of course, which will take the painting to a whole new level, as they say. Wow, she is a magnificent cat, I'd agreed, eyeing the picture with awe and feeling a rising sense of excitement in my heart, as I knew I was going to really enjoy this commission. I'd always been rather partial to black panthers with their large, sultry green eyes. I think it's their elusive reticence that adds to their mystique and appeal. I placed the canvas on the easel facing the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the rich, resplendent meadows, as I enjoyed glancing out at the exquisite country views. Somehow, as a working artist, I drew so much of my inspiration from nature, and that includes colours, textures, shapes and forms that would enhance my imagination to come up with ideas that sometimes were so remarkable that they even surprised me. I could see our sheep and goats with their dangling bells grazing happily together in the fields. Sometimes I think they thought they were the same creatures, even though they were so different. And I smiled to myself. There was something so relaxing about watching animals graze that always brought a feeling of peaceful serenity to my heart. Before long I was getting into my work with a zealous passion, and I surprised myself with how quickly it was coming together. And the mesmerising greenish eyes of this illustrious cat were staring back at me on the canvas, and looked so remarkably real that it sent a pleasurable chill down my spine, something that often happened to me when I resonated with my own work. I could see the black panther so clearly and visibly in my mind's eye, almost as if she'd been teleported to my studio and was coming to life, almost like a 3D manifestation, if you like, or a hologram. That was how I managed to capture her on the canvas. I was so lost in my work that time melted away like the butter on a hot cross bun, and I forgot about the fate as I became so absorbed and entrenched in my art. It can sometimes be all-consuming. All of a sudden I could hear an animal trailer truck used for carrying livestock driving up my driveway, crunching the gravel beneath heavy tyres and stopping short at the gate that led into the pasture where my sheep and goats were grazing. Who is this? I thought, feeling very annoyed. I stealthily ventured over to the window with my paintbrush still in hand, glancing out, and I was left gobsmacked and appalled by what I was perceiving. What the heck were these strangers doing, I pondered. Why were they on my property? I watched in horror as they let down the ramp of their trailer, and that was when I had a horrible, nauseating impression that these men were planning to steal my farm animals in broad daylight, but that was fortunately not to be the case. Instead, these strapping, muscular young men appeared to be carrying what looked like a very hefty, massive cloud down the ramp, one on either side of it, almost as if they were carrying a table. That suggested to me that this cloud-like structure, whatever it was exceedingly weighty. They glided up the ramp, returning 2 more times, transporting 2 more of these dirty woolly blobs, which they simply plonked down in the middle of my field, almost as if they were delivering huge bales of hay to me. I was so bewildered and nonplussed that I stood there in a bemused silence, watching everything unfold before my eyes, like a curious nonsensical movie, which was so incredibly bizarre. What on earth was going on, I wondered. To my amazement, the men proceeded to get back into their truck, but I did happen to overhear one say, "Imagine the shock when they get home. Love to be a fly on the wall to see their shocked reactions." "Me too," said the other. "It'll be hilarious." At that, they promptly drove away. Who were these strange men, and what were they up to? Were they setting me up for some kind of hoax, I wondered. I had never seen them before a day in my life because they weren't remotely familiar to me, and I was well acquainted with most of the locals in our town. I glanced down briefly at the floor and realised with surprise that my paintbrush had fallen out of my hand, and I quickly leant down to pick it up and glanced up at the meadow again. And what I was about to see next I have never been able to forget, for indeed it has left an indelible blueprint on my memory that can never ever be erased as long as I shall live. For out of the shadows, moving through the Douglas fir trees across our gravel drive, with the stealth, dignity, elegance and masterful agility of a black panther, and gliding over the wooden pole fence as if it were a mere piece of turf, was a dark, shadowy form, such as the likes that I have never ever seen before. I crept over to the bookcase surreptitiously and grabbed my binoculars to focus on this strange peculiarity that was even more preposterous than the weird clouds that had been dumped on the meadow. It was hard to focus on the critter, for indeed my hands were trembling and wobbling so much, with a mixture of wondrous awe, excitement and extreme trepidation. Finally I managed to compose my nervous energy and focused on the critter, who was standing yards away from one of the massive clouds, with an expression of extreme bewilderment and intrigued curiosity on his face, as if he was trying to fathom and ascertain what on earth this cloud was. I'm not exaggerating by any manner of means when I say that this imposing, lofty creature was built like a man in shape and form, but he was covered in long, flowing black hair that was as black as a panther's and exceedingly shiny. I discerned that his head merged from his huge shoulders rather like a sizable arch, but there appeared to be no visible neck. The creature's hairless, leathery face was much like that of a man, only it was a dark blue-grey colour, with deep-set dark brown eyes, a furrowed, extensively wrinkled forehead, and a very flat, wide nose, along with thin but very long lips. I also discerned it had long, lean, muscular legs, with scant hair over the knees, and of course under the armpits, and the arms were also long and lean, and fell to well beyond the knees. I would say without question that this creature was easily over 8 foot tall, and possibly 700 pounds or more, and even though he was so slim and lanky, I discerned he was exceedingly heavy, based on how majestic, sturdy and robust he was. It would rather be like comparing a heavy-built army tank to a flimsy modern-day vehicle of about the same size. The army tank, being so much stronger and more powerful, would be infinitely heavier and pack a much bigger punch. That is how solid and dense his anatomy appeared, which in my personal opinion is equally on par with a super soldier, a giant or very large impressive creature like a rhino, ox or lion. I believe the only reason I was seeing this elusive, mysterious creature was because he was exceedingly curious about the strange cloud that had been surreptitiously dumped on my land by peoples unknown, for reasons I could not begin to comprehend. To my astonishment, he lifted up one of the sizable clouds in his hands as if it was a ball, almost as if it weighed nothing, and looked up at it, and that was when I realised what it was, because I was looking through my binoculars. Oh my goodness, poor thing, I thought. It was a sheep that had become so enormous from years of not being sheared that it could barely walk, as it was a bundle and complete mass of wool that resembled a cloud. I watched the strange humanoid critter that all these years later I now know was a Bigfoot. He scratched his head as if to say, "Ha! I know what you are now. But why do you have so much wool on your body?" I could sense that the critter was almost as troubled as I was that this poor sheep was so completely incapacitated by wool. Indeed, all 3 sheep were exactly the same. Without thinking twice, I darted to the phone to call Benjamin, the man who shared my sheep for me, and I told him about the enigmatic, incongruous quandary I faced, and bless his heart, he told me he'd be over in a minute. I felt a huge, monumental sense of relief, because it was heinously cruel to have a sheep in such shoddy condition, who hadn't been sheared for goodness knows how many years. I looked out of the window and the Bigfoot had gone, and in that second I felt disappointed, for I had wanted to study the critter still further. Before long I was greeting the sheep shearer and leading him over the field. "My God, I've never seen anything like this before. These poor sheep can barely walk. Where on earth did you get them from?" "Well, I don't really know. Some very strange men arrived with an animal trailer and just dumped them on my land. I have no idea where they're from." "They must know you have sheep of your own," suggested the shearer, "and intentionally dumped them on you. But where they come from is anyone's guess, and why anyone would let them get into this kind of state, God only knows. Even so, I don't want to judge anyone. Maybe they were found in the wild or something. Boy, I would like to know their story. But we need to remove these fleeces, but this is going to be far from easy, because the fleece will pull on the skin and cut the animal, so it's not as straightforward as a normal shear." "Do you think you can do it?" "You bet," he said. "I've entered all kinds of sheep shearing competitions in Australia and around the world, so if anyone can do it, it's me. I'm actually quite excited about the challenge, I'm not afraid to admit." I can assure you this was not an easy job by any manner of means for this very kind, generous man to remove all the wool from my sheep, but he did it at no expense to me, out of the goodness of his heart, and a procedure that would normally take 2 minutes took over 45 minutes per sheep, and the wool on the sheep was humongous, tipping the scales at 87 pounds on number 1, and on sheep number 2, 80 pounds, and on sheep number 3, 89.5 pounds. Luckily the sheep were exceedingly cooperative, with a little sedation of course, and handled the whole ordeal exceedingly well, with just a few little nicks on their skin that were finally sterilised. I could see that the sheep could not believe what it was like to have that heavy burden and weight lifted off them that they'd been carrying for so long, and the vet confirmed that they were all in exceedingly good health, which in itself was a miracle. It was ironic how small and slender the sheep were under all that hair. They needed to be fattened up, that was for sure. Of course, when my husband and daughter returned from the fete, followed by a pizza evening spent with friends, they couldn't wait to tell me about their grand and fabulous day at the fete. "I'm sorry, Mum," said my daughter, "but you really missed out. The fete was absolutely amazing, and the cooking demonstration was brilliant. The burgers that chef made were the best I've ever tasted. They were moist and succulent with a touch of spice. Just perfect." "You're going to have to tell me the secret ingredients," I said, with a twinkle in my eye. "How did the fudge go down?" "It sold like hotcakes, Mum. Your fudge is the best. Everybody's asking for the recipe." "Well, that's good," I said. "How about your day, sweetheart?" said my husband. "It must have been very lonely for you on your own, but I do know how you get stuck into your work." "On the contrary," I said, "I would say staying at home, I succeeded admirably in overshadowing your day in leaps and bounds, because it turned out that my day was more exciting than yours, and that is not an understatement." My husband looked astonished. "Now you've got me. What happened?" After I told my family what had transpired, they were agog, and promptly ran to the field to see our 3 new additions to the family, for I was determined, come what may, that we would take care of these sheep for the rest of their natural lives. As for the humanoid, dark, hairy critter, no one could tell me what I'd seen, but I'm so glad to inform you that they didn't doubt my word for it. True to her word, Shane Farrell arrived at my home on the Tuesday afternoon to collect her art exhibit, that I'd worked day and night to finish, but the commission had been seamless, and the work, even if I say so myself, was outstanding. I knew that Shane would be as delighted with the piece as indeed I was, as I believe it was one of my most momentous works of art to date, as it was as if the Black Panther had come to life and walked out of the picture into our reality. It was that good. "Come with me," I said, guiding her to the gallery, where the artwork was on the easel, covered by a sheet. The woman began trembling. "Don't mind me," she said. "I get like this when I'm excited. I just can't wait." I pulled away the fabric, and Shane gasped in astonishment, and tears began to pour down her eyes. "It's sublime," she said. "It really looks like Shadow. It looked like he's lying on the sofa in our lounge, just like a domestic pussycat. I don't know what to say. You've excelled. I'm overwhelmed. The colours you've used, they're so vibrant. And the black of her coat, it's rich, it's luxurious. I don't know what to say. I'm overwhelmed." That's because with the black there are many layers and depths of colour, with varying tones, which enhances the realism. You never use one straight colour. Every colour has lots of tones underneath it. "And what about her eyes? It's as if she's staring right back at me through the picture." I know. I'm very pleased with them, I confess proudly. I was to find out later that her husband broke down in tears of joy when he received the painting, describing it as the best gift that he had ever received in his life. I was to learn that even visitors to their home had stopped dead in their tracks and said, "Oh my God! For a moment I thought it was real. I thought you had a live panther on your settee." As an artist, that is what you want to hear. As for the Bigfoot critter, whilst painting in my studio, there were 2 occasions when I had the distinct impression that I was being watched, or even studied if you like, and I looked up to see a black humanoid face staring at me through the window, and then it disappeared. If I had not seen the creature before, I truly think I would second-guess myself, and very much doubt that that is what I'd seen. But I am in no doubt, because I have seen that elusive creature before, and I know he resides on our land, and I think it might be just a wee bit curious about my art. So there you are. That's my story. What a fabulous story, and I really love the sound of that artwork. It sounds incredible. Until next time, goodbye and good night, and don't forget to subscribe.